Which of the new hires do you think's under the most pressure?
Sean Mannion, the pressure is high. The seat could already be a little warm because, look, the Eagles have a history of making some knee-jerk reactions when things aren't going well for this offense. Jalen Hurts has had 5 offensive coordinators since he became a full-time starter in 2021. Last year, things did not go well with Kevin Patullo. And we've also seen that when the Eagles have a good offensive coordinator, they get to the Super Bowl. See, Shane Steichen and Kellen Moore, things worked out well. So good luck, Sean Mannion.
Good offensive coordinator usually become a head coach the next year. All right, Mina.
I know other people will try to say, oh, maybe it's Mike McDaniel, or what about Justin Herbert? But let's be real. People will blame Herbert if that offense doesn't look good. Way more than they'd blame McDaniel or Eric Bieniemy. Andy Reid? None of those other names really matter. It's clearly the Philadelphia Eagles and Kellen Moore. It's kind of interesting. We've talked about this before, but here's the thing. If the offense doesn't look good and there are real problems, I don't think it's just Kellen on the hot seat. Nick Sirianni is right there with him. And depending on how things unfold, this is where it gets interesting. I don't know how possible this is based on how the season actually plays out, but let's just have a conversation. It's February, man. This is how I operate in the off-season. I think through all the outcomes, all the situations. I always say, what lens do you want to look at this through? So I run the tape on every possibility, bring it all together, so nothing catches me off guard. So here's one scenario. What if Nick Sirianni gets fired midway through the season and Kellen Moore becomes the head coach? Now that would be interesting because you have Vic Fangio in the building too. If you fire Sirianni mid-season, does Fangio just become the interim by default? But he's obviously not the long-term answer. He wants to retire. He'd just be there to get you through the next 8 weeks. Then does Kellen Moore potentially become the permanent head coach? Is it possible that Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie look at the situation and say, you know what? We actually believe in Kellen Moore. We just don't believe in Sirianni anymore. We think he's holding this team back. Maybe it's about relationships, chemistry, whatever. I don't know. But here's the tricky part. If the Eagles are struggling enough that Sirianni gets fired, is Kellen Moore even in a position to show his worth? Probably not. If the offense is struggling, Moore's stock drops too. If the offense is great and the Eagles are winning, then Sirianni probably keeps his job. So the scenario where Moore gets promoted mid-season requires a very specific set of circumstances. Now flip it. What if this offense looks awesome? Let's take it to the extreme. Say the Eagles go undefeated, win the Super Bowl, and have the greatest offense in NFL history. Every team wants to hire Kellen Moore as their head coach. Now what do? Do you say, sorry Nick, you've been great but goodbye, and promote Kellen? That's the weird situation you find yourself in when your coordinator is too successful. Same thing with Mike McDaniel in Miami. Let's say Justin Herbert plays out of his mind. 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Absolute avalanche. McDaniel's sitting there like, see? I told you guys I'm great. I'm ready to be a head coach. Washington Commanders, call me. Get rid of Dan Quinn. What do the Chargers do? Oh, we're so happy you stabilized the franchise, Harbaugh, but Mike McDaniel's the offensive genius who actually unlocked our quarterback. It's the weird situation you find yourself in as a CEO coach. Now, obviously, Harbaugh is way more respected than Sirianni, so it's a different dynamic. It's a lot easier for the Eagles to move on from Sirianni than it would be for the Chargers to move on from Harbaugh, even though Sirianni's won a Super Bowl and been to multiple. That's not a hot take. That's just reality. But back to Kellen Moore. He's under a ton of pressure. What I find interesting, though, is who gets blamed if things go wrong. If the offense struggles, say it's similar to last year, I actually think Sirianni and Jalen Hurts would get more of the blame. I think people would focus on them. It'd be split, sure, but more focus on Hurts and Sirianni than on Moore. Even though Hurts played great last year, people would look at him and Sirianni before they'd say, clearly Kellen Moore's not a good coordinator. Unless you have another year where Saquon Barkley doesn't look right, and you start hearing that A.J. Brown is causing problems, that he's toxic in the locker room, then Colin reports that Jalen's not liked, things get real messy, then it's not a 50-50 split. It's 25% Sirianni lost the locker room, 25% A.J. Brown is toxic, 25% Jalen Hurts isn't a good quarterback, 25% it's Kellen Moore, or the O-line, or everything all at once. Things can get frayed so easily because what's at stake is through the roof. This is a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Think about the Cowboys last year. They got off to a rough start, then got hot, and people were literally saying, this is the most dangerous team in the NFL. Look out if they make the playoffs. Then they didn't even make the playoffs. Couldn't beat the Lions. Repercussions? Not huge. With the Philadelphia Eagles, every negative outcome has massive repercussions. And that's what has kept the Eagles great for nearly 30 years at this point. Nearly 30 years of sustained greatness. That's why the seat is always warm. That's why the pressure is always on. Even a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who I've defended a million times, who won a Super Bowl and Super Bowl MVP, it's like, unless you're great year after year after year, everyone's always looking for the next thing. That's how it works in Philadelphia. They haven't locked in a coach-quarterback duo for 10-15 years. To be fair, the vast majority of teams haven't. Brett Favre won one Super Bowl, Aaron Rodgers won one, had McCarthy, then LaFleur. Sean McVay's had multiple quarterbacks, Goff for a stretch, Stafford for a stretch. Now he'll have another. Peyton Manning wasn't with the Colts for 20 years winning Super Bowls. It's a rarity to find yourself in an Andy Reid Patrick Mahomes situation or a Belichick Brady situation. It's not the norm. That's why I've emphasized this a million times. Locking up the GM and the owner is the most important thing. The coach matters, but as long as you have the right GM and owner, there will always be another Ben Johnson eventually. Maybe not next year, but the year after. There will always be another Mike Macdonald, another Sean McVay. They're always percolating. That's not the case with GMs, and obviously not with owners. That's the foundation. And that's what leaves all these doors open for Kellen Moore. That's why a seat like that is always warm for a team like the Eagles. Think about the Chargers. Do you think the Eagles would have lasted with Brandon Staley as long as he did? Absolutely not. Do you think they would have run it back with Sean McDermott year after year, after losing the 13-second game and then losing again in 2022? He'd be gone. Out of there. And we can say, oh, Philly's too harsh. But it works. The Eagles have won 2 Super Bowls essentially since Josh Allen got drafted, since Mahomes got drafted. The Bills haven't been to one. The results prove themselves in Philadelphia. Do you really think the Eagles would have trotted out Russell Wilson in New York? Kept rolling with Daniel Jones? Fired Sean McDermott? I don't think so. We can go through all these teams and judge their situations. I'll always find it funny when people criticize how the Eagles do business. In a lot of ways, other teams get more praise for how they operate, and yet they've had significantly less success. I'll end here because I'm waiting for Colin to bring this up one day. He's praised Harbaugh a lot, and I think Harbaugh is great. But Colin talks about how Harbaugh isn't always well liked, how he makes people uncomfortable, how that's what it takes to be great. Not everything's kumbaya. Sean McVay can rub people the wrong way. That's how it works for high achievers. And yet, in a lot of ways, that's exactly how the Eagles operate. Keep up or get left behind. Sink or swim. Philadelphia perfectly encapsulates that sink or swim mentality. Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, we've seen it in real time again and again, and yet I don't see a lot of people praising that. They just say, oh, the pressure's on in Philly. Like it's just random pressure. Not that the Eagles are operating in a way that legitimately maximizes and squeezes every last bit of juice out of the team. The core, the coaching staff, the quarterback. It's just a simple framing. I find it interesting. I'll leave it at that. What do you think? Do you agree that Kellen Moore is under the most pressure? That seems like low-hanging fruit to me. It's obvious. But if you disagree, let me know. Also, should it be? That's a different question. Should the seat be warm in Philadelphia? Should Kellen Moore be under this much pressure? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe. Thumbs up. Thank you. See you next time.